appreciate all you folks on Zoom. Min's not there this week. She told us she couldn't be here next week. She'll be here next week. We'll give you a report a little bit about Min. But we'd much rather have you here in person, but that's not possible for everybody. So bless you for being there and being so faithful. So I just want to say that to you personally and from the congregation. And we love to have you here. And I think that Zoom ministry will expand as well as our church gets bigger as well. Yeah, Denby was out in the early hours of the morning. I woke up to hear these funny sounds outside, and of course we've never slept in that house before, so I'm thinking, what kind of wonderful animal is out there? I go out there, and there she is. She's in her pajamas, and I called her over to make sure she actually had shoes on her feet, because my wife, once the gardening sets in, it's like really good. But the house, just a minute on the house. The house is absolutely gorgeous. It's beautiful. It looks ordinary from the outside. On the inside, it's a beautiful property, and it's so easy. All the places we've lived in. I was sharing with Guy before the service started about, the first house we lived in California. Bats would fly down from the roof regularly, and all sorts of. Nothing was level. Nothing. But it's fine. It's all part of the growth. But this house is beautiful, so we just praise God for it. Thank you for everybody that had a part in it. And some of you were willing it to happen. Like, come on, get it done. It's like, certain people from the Muhammad clan were like, yeah, come on. The Murphy clan, yeah, come on. Matt's excited that we're neighbours, so hey, it's great, isn't it? So, in terms of just doing a short talk this morning, Debbie and I both had. It seems like God gives us a message and it stays with us, and it might stay with us for a year. And Debbie's message has been on hardness of heart. And I think the Holy Spirit, as he ministers to us, and the one he's given to me is, what do you know and how do you know it? And who are you listening to? And that's the message that God has given to me. And last time I spoke here, I talked to how in Seinfeld, that TV show, he talks about yada 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 all the time, and that actually means to know. It's in the Bible, yada means to know. And so today I want to spend a few more minutes thinking about what do you know and how do you know it. And having just travelled from the other side of the world, it's a wonderful prism to look through, a lens to look through, to see how things might be different here, how things, what have the Brits got right, what has Europe got right, what has the US got right, it's an interest, it's just a privilege to be able to do that. And I could hear some creaking sounds behind me, it's Aaron. So when you look at the word yada in a concordance, to know, it's pages and pages and pages. So to know God, to know things is important. There you go. And what is that? And the word narrative comes up all the time. There's a narrative, and So here's our narrative. I'm going to read from the first few verses in Luke. In so much as many have taken up to hand to set in order the narrative, there's the word, those things which have been fulfilled among us, just as those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses. How do you know things? One of the things is an eyewitness report. That from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word delivered to them. It seemed good to me, also having had perfect understanding of all things from the very first, to write you an orderly account. So Luke is saying that he wants to write down things that he knows, things that have been witnessed with eyewitnesses. And from this period of time, disciples were still around. They would orally teach, and so the Christian church knew the eyewitnesses' accounts of the early disciples. And so there's Luke recording that. And then in Paul's letter to Timothy, the second one, there's that wonderful verse that I mentioned last time I spoke to, because I think it's just a great verse to take into our hearts. Paul says, "For this reason I also suffer these things. Nevertheless, I'm not ashamed, for I know whom I have believed, not what you believe, who you believe, and am persuaded that he is able to keep what I have committed unto him against that day. It's the old authorized verse that I learned growing up. But I love that verse. And he's talking about, Paul's talking about who he knows. What do you know? Who do you know? The Christian narrative is that Christ died for us. We've met Jesus as Christians. We've given our life to Jesus. That's our narrative. That's the one we should spend most of our time in the forefront of our minds thinking about that narrative. And historically, you know, the Christian faith is very well grounded in history. And one of the greatest courses I ever took in my life, when I went to, name drop here, when I went to my British university and did a humanities degree, I'm not actually going to say how I did in that humanities degree because Aaron's there. But it was a great experience. But the course that I loved above all others in the humanities degree was a course called What is History? What is history? How do you know something happened? How do you know it? We're talking about the gospel, we're talking about Christianity and the life of Christ. We know it happened. We have eyewitnesses accounts. We have documents up to yin yang. We have history. We have so many things that point historically to Jesus. But the main thing, like Paul says, is that we know Jesus. Jesus has come to us on some level and we know it. Augustine used the word, it's intelligible. We can tell, we can sense, we can know that God is real. And if you've not had that experience where God has actually come to you and you're like, oh Lord, you know, come into my life and take me, and that personal experience of knowing God, then I encourage you to just do that right now. And as you go on in your life, watch how Jesus will come real and appear to you and become part of that Christian narrative. So it wasn't about what you know in the early church, it was about who you knew. And all these Christians were having these encounters with Jesus. And I've shared before that when I took that course that tried to pull apart all the Bible and the New Testament and the Gospels and everything by that Christian modernist teacher, at the end of the course he said, I can't think of why everybody keeps, all over the world, keeps still in the 21st century having encounters with Jesus. That's what he said at the end of his lecture, and I'm like, well, duh, hello, but you know, we're trust and faith, we know. So that's our narrative. And it's not what you know, it's who you know. And the what you know gets you in trouble. And a great example of that I came across recently was in the Christian church, there's many discussions about baptism. Should it be at birth? Should it be as an adult? Should it be immersion? Should it be sprinkling? And when I came across the Didache, which a Didache is an account of 1st and 2nd century Christian doctrine. And what do they say about baptism? Way back then, they said, if there's plenty of water, immerse them. If there isn't, just sprinkle it. Done. Done. Okay, done. So the point I'm trying to make, and as I read and I study and I pray on these things, it's really important for Christians to know the who and not the what. And don't get caught up in the what. Because the what divides everybody. Whereas we can all, as Christians, unite around loving Jesus. And that's what we should do, because we've got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of work to do. And we're going into political season. We're in the political season here in America. And isn't that fun? And we went, well, we had various trips in England. We went to Cambridge. We went to Oxford, which are the Ivy League schools in England. I didn't go to those. I went to another prestigious institute, but wasn't Oxford or Cambridge. But I have been to Oxford and Cambridge many times, especially Cambridge, because it's just around the corner. And one of the people that went to Oxford was Lewis Carroll, who wrote Alice in Wonderland. And you all know Alice in Wonderland. And what happens in Alice in Wonderland is Alice falls asleep by the riverbank and she ends up falling down a rabbit hole. And so that language is coming to our come into our vernacular, our everyday use. And what does it mean, fall down a rabbit hole? Well, what happened to Alice? Well, she went to a really strange place. It was really strange. Queen of Hearts, all these Cheshire cats, there was mushrooms glowing. Everybody in the 60s is going, oh, you're having a drug experience. Well, there's no evidence for that. If you look at the literature, he was C.S. Lewis, I mean, not C.S. Lewis, he was around at this time too, but Lewis Carroll was a Church of England minister. And he had some interesting things about his life. But that phrase from Alice in Wonderland, falling down a rabbit hole, means generally you end up in a very strange place. Or you get so involved in something you kind of cut out everything else. And there's a child at the door. In the UK, I want to tell you that people are all falling down the rabbit holes of their cell phone every day, the same as they're doing here. It's even worse in England. You can't go anywhere without anybody walking on down the rabbit hole. And that, hello, come on darling, yeah, there we go. And so that sense about what that means and the fact that we're in a political season, I'm feeling like Christians just don't fall down rabbit holes as we talk about these things. Now, what do we know and how we know it? Well, we know, for example, that Min exists. She's not just a face on, I'm talking about her because she's not here today. She's not just a face on the TV screen. We actually went and we met with wonderful, beautiful men in Oxford and had a wonderful day with her. We know she exists. She's real. We know that Cambodia exists because a week ago or 2 weeks ago, Anna was here telling you about her experience in Cambodia. Beautiful, young, enthusiastic Christian young woman. We know those things exist. But travel is a great teacher. Travel is a great teacher. So it's wonderful to be able to go to these places and to see these things. We sat with men. We went to Oxford with men, and we sat with men outside Christchurch, part of Oxford University. It's a massive, massive edifice of a building. Lewis Carroll taught there. We know that exists. So we know all these things. We know them. We know them. And so as I thought about these things, what I want to just tell you folks today as we're getting into the political season where everybody exaggerates, lies, you know. My advice to you all is don't avoid the rabbit holes. You know, vote your conscience. Avoid rabbit holes. But go with what you know. Go with what you know and who you know. And I always, one of the really deep things that I try to hold dear in my life and share with others is the people in my life, like my mother and father, and people in my church growing up, teachers in my Bible classes, they're the people I know. And they're the people we should be listening to. So, if you can, turn the narratives off, turn the radios off. I think it's important we're informed, so we hear news, and we try to get it from a good source, but we all know how controversial all that is. And so what as Christians are we meant to do? And I think rather than us going down these rabbit holes and putting our energy and getting fired up because of this or that or the other, just spend our energy looking at our fellowship, looking at the people that love us, that have helped us, looking at our friends who might need help, looking at the personalities in our church, listen to them, love them, be with them. Let's build up our congregation here. And now we're back in Bonnie-Doon, we can take a much more active part in that. Reduce reliance on outside information. The Christian life is an inner life. It's about Jesus and relating to Jesus and experiencing Jesus in the inner self, in the inner sanctum. So I would advise you, just be careful and judicious about what you let into your consciousness. And you know, I told you, I'll be in my car, go out, leave Pescadero. I'm in a great mood. It's beautiful. The Pacific Ocean's there. It's sunny. It's beautiful. I picked up, switch on the radio, and I'm dragged into all the stuff that's going. And we need to be informed, but we don't need to be overwhelmed. If you look at the life of Jesus, what did he do? There were no cell phones, obviously. Intimately, for 3 years, he was with his 12 disciples, intimately, every day, walking around, talking, sitting, sharing. And some of us, that's hard. I'm one. I mean, if it was up to me, I'd, stay at home watching the Premier League soccer channel, and I'll be happy with a cup of tea, nice wife, great, I'm done. God calls us and Jesus calls us to a life like his, which is sharing with people, being open with people. My wife's listening to this, so she's going to hold me to this, right? And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I said, Ian, you just said that or something. So my advice to you guys, don't go down any rabbit holes. As the political season gets crazier and crazier and crazier, come into the presence of God, know God, and love our congregation and the people in our lives. Listen to them, share with them, love them. Amen. What's the last hymn, sir?
542.
542.